State University Museum, which is about 45 minutes south of here. And we are a museum of fashion design and costume history. So mannequins are us. We do a ton of work with dress forms and mannequins. So before I get started though, I really appreciate Dante and Phil and all the work they did for the forum, and appreciate the CMA for inviting me and Mountain Maker Forum. I want to thank Brian Jeffries, who donated a bunch of the Fosshape for us to use today. He's from Wonderflex World, which is pretty much the sole source for this stuff right now. And and then I want to give credit to Cynthia Amneas and Marla Miles at the Cincinnati Art Museum, because they're kind of the two people who brought Fosshape into the museum world and introduced me to it back at the Mountain Makers Forum 2 at the Smithsonian. So I really appreciate their pioneering spirit in Fosshape. So a little background about what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk mostly about a 4-part master form for Fosshape. We often need a quantity of similar or same size mannequins for a show. What drove us to begin this experiment was we acquired Katharine Hepburn's collection of stage and screen costumes, and we wanted to do a show of her, and we learned quickly that when she was younger, she was 5 foot 9 inches tall. She had a 19-inch waist. So if you try to find a mannequin that would fit those dimensions, you're not going to find it. So we wanted to make a lot of them that would fit her clothing. So when we did that first run, the initial way we did it was to create the Fosshape form and then split the back seam and pull the Fosshape off, kind of like a clamshell. And what that does is it creases the front and makes a really weak spot, and it kind of gets a little nasty look, and we want these to be fairly pristine. And you lose a lot of strength because you've lost that back seam. We kind of laced it together like you would a corset, which held, but it just wasn't the best solution. So anyway, so we started working with doing this multiple part form, which you can extract from the Fosshape without as much damage. You might get a little bit, but it's pretty good. So let me tell you what Fosshape is first, and I'm literally reading this from Cynthia and Marla's paper because it's the best description. Fosshape is a white, non-woven, heat-activated fabric that is proprietary 100% polyester blend with no additives or post-treatments. Individual fibers are composed of 2 polyesters, each with a different melting point. The outer shell of the fiber has a considerably lower melting point than the core. The fibers are mechanically entangled to form the fabric. When Fosshape is introduced to a heat source, the outer core of the fibers begins to soften or melt, causing the fibers to contract and become rigid on cooling. The material activates in the range of 100 to 130 degrees Celsius, which is about 212 to 265 Fahrenheit, with either a dry or steam heat source. That being said, we find that steam is absolutely hands down the best way to do it. Trying to use a heat gun gets really spotty results. It's hard to get even heat over the surface. And the steam helps the heat penetrate all the way through, so you're hardening the inner fibers as well as the outer fibers. So it makes a much stronger product. And it also kind of gives the surface a little bit of a polish, which is kind of nice. So for the master form, this is from our Great War show. So this was another show where we used a quantity of mannequins in a similar silhouette, because at the turn of the century, 20th century, women were smaller. They tended to be flatter chested. Their dresses were more sack-like. So we wanted a mannequin that kind of fit that style. So we took a commercial dress form and basically gave a breast reduction and a waist reduction and carved it to what we figured was the lowest common denominator. So we took the smallest of the garments that we were going to work with, carved it to that, because then we can pad out as needed to fit the garments better. Because the one drawback to this is once it's formed, you can't really shrink it or carve it. So basically, we will either build up ethafoam and make a form out of that. So just like you would do, you're building a crate, you heat weld it with a heat gun, stick it together. I tend to do that method rather than hot gluing, because hot gluing really bungs up your knives pretty quickly. So this gives you a little bit cleaner product. You'll get gaps inside, but none of that's going to be really important at the end of the day. So, you know, we basically built bust, stomach, butt, and then work our way back from there. So we'll take that form, trace out what we want, go to the bandsaw, and then we just are, with the tape measure, constantly checking dimensions, stepping back, checking it visually, making sure it's symmetrical, making sure it looks human. And then we'll just work it until we get the kind of shape that we want. You want to plan ahead if you're going to have a neck, because the initial Katharine Hepburn ones were scoop neck because we started from one dress. We made all the Fosshape forms off of that form and then realized that we probably should have done the neck. Katharine Hepburn hated her neck, so she often wore high collars, if you see her movies. So, so we had all these Katharine Hepburns with unsupported collars in the show. Yeah, so we use knives, saws, surf forms, whatever we can get our hands on to just shape it and basically sculpt the form that we want. So this is the Great War form in its 4-part iteration. So that's this one. So I'm going to set it on the table because they just pop apart. So by doing this, these are keys. This is tapered towards the top, and so you can finish the form, then extract this out, then reach in, pull this out, and then you can get the sides out without having to deconstruct the form. So, and then the keys just kind of slip in and they help position everything within the Fosshape so that everything lines up the way that we want it to. So, you know, it's, thank God for YouTube and Google, because it's like, you look up, like, how do they do this in industry? You know, how do they make, you know, something with an undercut, you know, plastic blow molding. It's all there. My vacuum press was because RC car makers use vacuum presses to make their car bodies, and I like to do YouTube, so that's great. So that's the commercial form, and then this is the ethafoam form that's on the screen. So same principle. Ethafoam's a little toothier, so it's a little harder to pull out. I've had lots of suggestions today about possible materials to coat it with to make it slipperier and try to get it out. I was actually going to try to use Vivex between these parts to see if it would slide out easier, and it just, in the first class, it became like, it just didn't work. And I was too frantic to really make it work, because public speaking is not my strong suit. So anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to do this form, and I'm going to turn this to steam while I get it ready to go. Any questions so far? So while the steamer's getting ready to girdle, I'm going to talk a little bit about patterning and sewing. So that is, so when you put the form in, you basically put it in the reverse order that you take it out, both sides, then the top and the bottom. Okay, so pop her on there. This little bottom plate. Wow. That's one. That's stripped. Yeah, just got a little crust there. So this bottom plate kind of helps to line things up, especially when you get the orientation proper. So you can push down on the form and kind of get these to line up. So patterning. I don't put a lot of effort into this because the Fosshape shrinks a lot. Oftentimes the parts that are exposed are going to be upholstered. And if they're not, then I'll pay a little bit more attention to try and make sure that everything fits, you know, super nice. But basically, I start with a piece of, well, even a raw piece of muslin. So you can see in the slides, oftentimes I'll take the finished edge, you know, pin it in the center line down the front. And I'll mark that fold. Then I'll bring the piece around to the back. obviously I would be pinning this. And I'll go about 3/4 past the center line and cut it. That gives me a seam allowance and gives me a little bit of extra fabric to work with, so it's easier to pull the form over the top. Then, as you can see in that really is, it's just annoying. The shoulder I just kind of fold and I'll fold it over and fold the fabric and then mark it with a pencil, and then same on the back side, and then I'll pull darts in here, and that basically allows me to have less Fosshape to try to shrink. 20% is a lot, but it's not enough to get to here from here.
So that's the shrinkage rate?
Yeah, about 20%. Yeah, 10 to 20%. And that can go up or down depending how much you steam it. It'll continue to shrink until it can't anymore.
Can you reshrink it after you shrunk it once? Can you rework it?
You can re-harden it. What the problem is if it really needs to be on the form to do that.
Yeah.
If you try to do it off the form,
yeah,
and it shrinks unevenly, suddenly you'll get a pucker or a divot. So I've just found that I try really hard to just get it right the first time and then not have to do it. But yeah, it can be done. It'll soften and re-harden multiple times. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so I'll pull a dart and pin that, and then mark it with a pencil. And I'll usually pull one along the back as well. And those do two things. In addition to pulling all that extra fabric, it's basically like corset boning. This becomes a really rigid spine. And so I've got 4 extra spines to give this a lot of vertical strength. And then the back seam is the same thing. That's a really nice, strong, basically structure inside. You can see this one, we worked really hard to get these fit pretty nicely. So, so that's kind of what my pattern looks like. I don't fuss about it too much. And when it's cut, you can see. And then what I do is fold a piece of the Fosshape material, and so this is the fold, and that line I marked fold, I pin there, and then I just cut the fabric basically to that pattern, and then open it up, and then the fold becomes this line, so the front is nice and smooth. And then I pin it. My mother is a terrific seamstress. My boss is a terrific seamstress. I'm a woodworker. So I have Neanderthal sewing skills. But I can get this stuff together, which is really all that counts. So I pin the darts together and pin the shoulders together, basically just working the curves. And then typically what I'll do is sew the shoulders and the darts first, and then sew this, because then I have more flat fabric to get through the machine. If this is a tube and I'm trying to sew the shoulders, it would be harder. And then the last thing to go on is the neck cap. So, and that's to the right, that's what the neck cap looks like when it's pinned. So, a hobby level machine probably isn't going to get through this stuff. Somebody in the last section had a great idea of getting a walking foot for sewing machine, which I should know about, but I didn't until that moment, even though my mother did quilting. So then, you take this and turn it inside out. Someone asked about, well, why don't you just steam it, that way with the seams on the outside. I just don't find it that attractive, and I'm a little bit fussy, and yeah, so I like having that finished look on the outside. If I'm doing this right, I don't have to upholster these at all. The Fosshape is really pretty attractive. You do have to handle them with some care because they will get dirty. And because it's felt, if you have a fabric that's shedding the really fine little things, they'll just get embedded, and that color's going to be on it for forever. So, right, so again, work on taking.
Is there a different way to bound it together? Like, could you, or you have to sew it?
We've chosen to sew it. I don't think that adhesives would hold it well enough to use a glue or anything like that. I'm sure that,
Would be like a feasible webbing?
I don't think so, because I think then you'd set the Fosshape. I mean, it's worth an
Oh,
experiment,
yeah.
but, yeah, we just find that this is quick and easy, and we have sewing machines. So, yeah, good stuff there. Sides going first. This is somewhat fiddly, so it either goes in like really well the first time, or you end up like really having to fuss to get it in the right position. I'm hoping this is going to be the former I know. So if you have questions, just shout them out anytime while I'm fussing around with this. I will tell you that I sewed these up in kind of a hurry just before the conference, so they're not my best. They're not bad, but they're not my best.
But you actually made Fosshape 20% larger than the phone.
I cut the pattern loosely, you saw that, it just kind of hangs off the form. It's got enough, making it too tight to get over and making it tight enough so I'm not fighting with too much excess.
If it shrinks to 20%, does that make it a harder piece
Yes,
as compared to shrinking 10%?
yes. Yeah, because it's a denser, the resins become, a denser layer. So, let's see how I'm doing. Not too bad this time. And I really do try to work the form in and down, make sure everything is lined up. It just makes it. This platform's going to work for me this time.
Was Fosshape originally invented for this purpose?
Yeah, it was invented for the theater, for making props for the theater. And like I said, Marla and Cynthia in Cincinnati must have seen somebody using it for that and been like, hey, that would be great for a costume. Yeah, this neck might be a little bit loose one, but I apologize for.
So it's fairly tight. It's fairly tight.
Yeah, I mean, it's snug down here, a little bit loose here. This is probably a little bit big, and hopefully I'll get enough shrinkage to pull that right. But okay, so when I start, Gurgles is going to work for me. There he goes. That's what I call Gurgles. I always start at the bottom. The reason I do is you can see how much it shrinks. So it's pulling basically my starting point for me. And so anything from here is then going to pull down the neck, pull down the shoulders, and just keep it tighter. If I start up here, this might start to creep up, and then I've got more fabric coming along. And this part of the demo is pretty much just watching paint dry, so jump in if you have any questions or comments.
And so you're putting the steamer right up against the fabric?
Yeah, because I'm trying to actually get that steam to push through the fabric so that it's hardening all the way through. That's why steam works so much better than dry heat, because you can really get to push it all the way through and fuse all those layers of.
How do you know when you're good?
It's really trial and error, and probably more error than trial. The surface becomes a little bit shiny when it's fused, and it actually does, you can feel the density. I mean, this is very much like soft felt, and this is much more like a rough plastic. So, I mean, you get used to it pretty quick. I mean, at this point, we've done so many of these now. Yep, that one's done. So you can see like these boning, or these darts, they really flatten out pretty nicely and become a really nice, strong rib. One thing I was thinking about after somebody mentioned the walking foot is that a serger sewing machine would be really nice because it makes a binding stitch and it cuts the material at the same time, so you get less fabric underneath.
Did you ever have to worry about it getting too hot? Because I know like with that foam, you can actually weld it to itself.
I haven't yet. I'm told you can laminate this stuff, but I've never been able to successfully do it. So I'm assuming that it isn't a powerful enough bond unless the fibers are interlinked. I'll give you all samples of this stuff. I've got them up here on the table, and they do make another product called Wonderflex, which is more like a plastic than a felt. And I really just haven't had much time to experiment with it. But that's also supposed to be something that you can fuse to itself.
So when you're finished with this, and you've got the kind of plastinated fabric piece, do you use that, is it sturdy enough to use just as a shell, or do you
Yep.
like fill in? Oh, really?
Yep.
Wow.
Here, I can do this now. Pass this one around. That's hollow.
Oh, it is.
And one of the really nice things about
Oh, it's
this,
just got it from the bottom.
yeah, just foam on the bottom.
Oh, okay.
One of the really nice things about it is if you're doing a traveling exhibition, these weigh nothing, so they cut your shipping costs a little bit. They're really easy to pack.
Are you able to color that?
I don't know that. It's a polyester fiber. And I can say that we probably wouldn't dye it just because we often put the garments directly in contact with it, and I would want to see that transfer.
Does it come in different thicknesses or is it a
Yes.
standard?
This is, you guys are seeing the stuff that I like to use the best. I've actually used all three today. There's a 300, 600, and then this is called 600D. So, yeah, I'll pass those samples around after if we get done. The 600D is basically the 600 that's been rolled through some kind of a compression machine, and so the fibers are packed a little bit tighter. It's easier to sew because it's less furry on the surface, so it doesn't get caught up in your sewing machine foot. And it hardens a little bit harder. I think there might be, like the fibers might have a little bit more of the resin coat on, or the polyester compound, whatever it is.
Can you tell me how the rod is attached in here?
I can. So I cut as a foam base. Sometimes I'll use plywood and staple the Fosshape to the plywood disc. But right now that's just, I drill through, I take a piece of that pipe, grind the end of it, and then just run it through so it's a nice tight fit, and then I just put some hot glue on it, shove it in.
Okay. So it's not going all the way up to the neck?
It's not. I just make sure it goes all the way through the foam so that it can adjust in height on these stands.
We'll share her.
So from not talking about shaping the model, but from just that process, how long it takes you to do a full one?
I think on my best days, if I've got a student assistant, I can do 10 to 12 weeks in a day.
So
And that includes cutting and sewing.
Wow.
So once they're patterned, it goes really pretty quickly.
I see.
Yeah. And if I have someone who is a better seamstress than I, tailor than I am, then even better. So you can see I didn't get the neck seam quite as nice as I would normally.
The magnets.
Yeah, we'll go over that too in a second. Yeah, we've started using the rare earth magnets for arm connections because it eliminates a danger point with, mannequins often have hooks that the arms hang on them. So if you've got a particularly fragile object or the arm is really tight, you can snag the shoulder. So we like using the magnets. Plus they're cool.
Neodymium.
Neodymium, yep.
Hates to take notes.
Is this-
And as I learned, you want to make sure that they don't clack together too much because apparently they lose strength. I did not know that until this conference. So that's why we come to these things.
Are you using a magnet to magnet connection or a magnet
I do.
to steel?
No, I use a magnet to magnet connection, although after having watched that demo, I'm thinking about using steel plates with a magnet between because that seemed to be the strongest bond that she described.
I thought she said 2 magnets was stronger than a magnet.
I thought it was the,
Yeah, I think if there is a piece of steel in between, it's stronger.
yeah, that's what I thought. Away from it. Yeah, so I apologize, that's not my best neck. This is the one that Katharine Hepburn hates. She'll wear a high collar on this one for sure.
Is the surface pinnable after
Yes,
you?
it is. Yeah, and it's got enough tooth that it really gently kind of grips the fabric so things don't slide. Where that's problematic is like weighted silk or something that's really delicate. If you're putting it on, it kind of catches you. So we in that case, we would probably upholster it in Lycra, make this surface a little bit slicker. So yeah, you can see how much it's shrinking and kind of taking a shape. One of the issues with this particular dress form is that, like the commercial one I showed you from the Great War, that was really easy to get in and out because the bust was so small. This bigger bust kind of makes, there's a little catch in here and remove one of the sides. It's not awful, but. So just to give you some idea too of the different densities. This was the first one we did today, and that's with the 300. And then this was the second one, and that's the 600. And then, like I said, this is the D, this is the big stuff.
So when it jumps from 300 to 600, does it mean it's like twice as thick?
Yeah, and if you, yeah, almost literally. I'm gonna stop so I can show you the pull-out process, but I would probably work this for a few more minutes back at the museum, just to try and fuss some of these things down a little bit more. But yeah, I definitely gonna have to tweak my pattern too. So. And it cools pretty fast, so you can start working on extracting it pretty rapidly. So because we shrank under here, I want to cut actually up past that plywood disc. My director gets quite upset when I use her really good sewing scissors to cut this stuff, but
She should.
she's like, "You're not using the gingers on that." Oh, yes, I am. I'd feel the same way if she used my table saw for, pine or something. So, I may need your assistance on this. If you can hold her by the shoulders there. I had cut these, what I thought was a great idea. I was going to do like bowling ball rips in the bottom of this. And in the first class, they ripped right out. So, yeah, so then you pull that one out, reach up, get that top one. And then, like I said, this first one is just a little bit of a tight fit. I may just shave her down a little bit, make the carrot padded out, because you can see it's just going to crease there a little bit. Not too bad. So, yeah. So that's And so this is the 600D, and the shoulders are a little weak because this base is a little tall for that steam room. I didn't really feel like dancing with her that much. Plus, the first class I almost walked into the steamer with my face. So anyway, this is, someone asked me, well, what's the benefit to this over just carving ethyfoam form and putting stockinette on it? Well, that's great if you're doing one.
Yeah.
If I'm doing 25, yeah, this just goes really fast. So,
So what would you choose this one over this one? Like a lighter one?
I probably wouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to use that to
Just
show
to
the
show,
difference.
yeah.
Yeah, we used that for, we just did a show of opera costumes,
Yeah.
and we made masks
Yeah.
with that material
Lighter.
because we could make the nose and
Right.
kind of push it in a little bit harder, and it didn't need any structure really. But that is perfectly fine, and this is that's just a little bit better. I think that's really plenty strong for.
Could you layer it? Like put 2 layers of 600 together and make it even stronger?
That's, I was saying earlier, I think that the fibers really need to be entangled before they'll really fuse together. They say you can, but I haven't had any success where it didn't just immediately separate again. So, not that I've really tried that hard because I haven't had a call for it, but it might be possible. So,
Wasn't someone talking about painting it with some surface or another?
yes, we, for those masks
Yeah.
that we did for the opera, we gessoed them.
Yeah,
With just painted gesso and then painted on them. I really don't know how well this would dye. I just really don't.
Well, it's polyester, so it's not going to take a record dye.
Yeah,
But if you were to use the gesso, you could get it painted.
yeah, you could. You just would have to test all your paints and like that. Most of the time, what we'll do is if just say the neck and part of the upper chest is exposed, they'll just sew essentially a dicky and just pull it over and just cover that part. And we'll color key it with the exhibition. So the arms. Any questions so far about that part of it?
Does it dull your scissors pretty good?
Probably, but they're not my scissors, so I just have to
I mean,
set
have
them out.
you tried cutting it with anything?
Yeah, I would think. Utility knife will work, but scissors are just for me a little bit easier.
Sure.
I've used one of the little, the round bladed
Oh, really?
roller knives,
Yeah.
and those work pretty well too. It's basically I've got a template for right and left. Although really you could just make a circle, it doesn't have to be the shape. Just use a portion of it to drill in the depth of the magnet and secure the magnet into this. And then this goes in before the ethyfoam, and of course I grab the left one. Goes in before the ethyfoam, and you can staple it in using stainless or Manila staples, or this one is screwed in. I don't really recommend hot glue for this because if it fails, it's going to be dropped inside. Yeah. So, and then the connection here right now is just a piece of mat board. Because I want something acid-free in there, and then this is driven through with a machine screw and a nut on the back side. Then it's just hot glued to the ethyfoam. It's just low-temp hot glue. We've had a few of these fail though, so I think in the future I'm just going to get longer machine screws and compress it down with a washer and just push them in. Because most of the time that's going to be covered, or we'll just press it with stockinette and it'll be secure.
What part has failed? You said
The mat board separates from the ethyfoam.
Okay, so
Yeah, the hot glue just
it's not the
doesn't.
magnet.
No, it's not the magnet. No, it's just this connection.
Okay.
Hot glue and ethyfoam have a tenuous
I know,
relationship. So, and I don't like using high temp because it burns right into the foam, and low temp isn't quite as strong. So I haven't found the best solution. Except that one of the things I've been playing with is 3D printers are really cool. So I'm thinking about this as an arm socket. Could also be made out of wood, but it's a 3D printer, huh? So I drew this up in SketchUp, and basically, if this hexagon is on the arm and this is embedded in, you'll have positionability of the arm. You can ratchet it in a couple of different directions just based on that. I was just talking to Shelley Bueller from NMAI, and we're thinking this should be probably thinner, so you don't have to pull it quite so far in case your Garmin is tight. But the principle would be the same. And then, you know, you get crazy and gear this and make it so it's infinitely positionable, but just for a starter point, I thought this was kind of an interesting way to go with that. As far as making the arms go, tell me if I'm running over. I don't want to keep anybody from a flight or anything like that. This is I call this the Arminator. So, Best Supply in Texas is a construction supplier. They work with concrete construction, and they use ethafoam as backer rods between concrete joints. It's expansion material. And they make one in 3 inch, which is great, and it's been Audi tested, which is even better. So if you order the white stuff, it's approved for use. So we start with that, and then cut it to the length that we want, and then I haven't even shown my slide. Whip ahead on that. There we go. So you skewer it this way, flip it off, turn it around, skewer it the other way, put this loose skewer in this end, and then this is cut at a taper. So set your bandsaw fence, and you feed this side rides along the fence, and you cut it, back it out, turn it a couple degrees, cut it, back it out, and basically make a tapered dowel out of this. And then you can just surfform it down. And then when you pull the arm out, you can insert a piece of 1/4 inch aluminum armature wire, and then you can bend your arms. So kind of serves two purposes that way. So, yeah, so I mean the ethafoam base, this is just a piece of 2 inch. I've done bigger ones, but it really hasn't proven to be worth the extra time or cost to do it. This really seems to hold up pretty well. So, yeah. Let's see what I've used. I think that's really pretty much everything. If you guys have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Can I take a little picture of your tapered dowel machine?
Yeah, sure.
Or jig, I should say.
Yeah, so basically you can use a shim to adjust if you want slightly more taper or less taper. Any other questions?
That was great.
What sort of sizes does this material come in?
Oh, it's 57-inch rolls. So you buy it by the yard. It's about $57 a yard for the 600D.
Okay.
So it's not terribly expensive. It takes about 3/4 of a yard for a dress form this size. And we figured it's about $120 for a commercial dress form and 6 hours of labor to carve a ethafoam dress form. So it's a lot cheaper to do it this way.
Yeah.
Anything else?
How have you been storing them? You end up with a lot of them.
We do have a lot of them. I usually wrap them in a plastic dry cleaner bag just to keep the dust off of them. They'll stack okay without crushing. I wouldn't put something heavier on top of them,
Yeah.
but by themselves, yeah, you can stack them up like cordwood. For the Hepburn show, we had to ship, 40 of these with the show. And so I just built a crate where they stood vertically. And I'm just going to, these were shorter, so they were able to rest on the bottom of the crate okay. And like I said, they're so light that you can move 30 of them with one person. It's really nice.
Have you used this stuff in any other application besides the dress forms?
We did a show of lingerie and corsetry, and so we would make the form and then cut it, but we had to use a lot more internal support, because once you've done it and you cut it, it's weak on that thin edge. But yeah, it's worked for that. Masks. Oh, and hair, because we do paper hair for our mannequins, and so we made wig caps for them. And then we can do the paper hair on the wig cap, and then we can store the hair. So next time we need an 18th century wig, we can pull it out, or 1840s wig, or whatever. So we can just keep track of those, and then we have them. Because back in the day, we double stick taped the paper to the mannequin. Yeah, that's like labor intensive to get that off. So this makes it a lot easier to keep track of that. Yep.
How are you adhering the rabbit hair to the skull cap then?
Hot glue.
Do I use it in
Yep,
another?
yeah, and that's just the hobby level hot glue. I mean, this stuff is the 3M jet melt, but yeah, just the Michaels or Packaging's hot glue works great for paper hair. All right? I think I did it in 45 minutes.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Like I said, I've got samples up here, and I got business cards, so if you do have any questions in the future, give me a call. That'd be great.